Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Rachel Ray here, and today we're doing part 3 of the Irish stories and poems from the book A Child's Treasury of Irish Stories and Poems. This is by Gillian Macmillan and the link for this book is down in the description below. Today we're going to start with a story that's very near and dear to my heart. This is the story of Scythe, and that is the name of the woman that our town is named after, Scythe. It was evening, and Finn was returning home. His 2 hounds, Bran and Slán, were at his side. Suddenly, a fawn jumped out in front of them, and immediately the hounds gave chase. Finn followed, and to his great surprise, when he finally caught up with them, the hounds were lying peacefully beside the fawn. She must be one of the fairy people, he thought to himself. During the night, Finn woke to find a beautiful young girl standing at his bedside. He knew that she must be the fawn he had hunted that day. "I need your help, Finn," she whispered softly. "My name is Scythe, and you were the only one who can help me. 2 years ago, one of the druids of my people, the Fir Dorica, wanted me to be his wife. When I refused, he cast a spell on me and turned me into a fawn. Only the man I love can protect me." "Tell me where he is, and I will take you to him," Finn answered. "Why, he's here in front of me," cried Scythe. "While I am with you, I can take human form, and the Fir Dorica cannot harm me." Finn was delighted to hear this, for he had fallen in love with Scythe as soon as he had seen her. Within a short time, they were married, and they lived happily in his fort on the hill of Allen. One day, Finn received news that Norsemen were coming again in their longships to attack. Finn prepared to leave at once. It was the duty of the Fianna to protect the country from any invaders. Before leaving, he warned Scythe not to venture outside the fort until he returned. The fight was long and difficult, but eventually the invaders were driven back to their ships. Immediately, Finn set off for home. As Finn approached the fort, he was troubled. He could see no sign of Scythe coming to greet him. Then he grew fearful and rushed into the fort. His chief steward came to him and told him terrible news. One morning, as Scythe looked over the plain, she gave a great shout of joy. She cried out that you were returning. "We looked out and we saw you with Bran and Slán, but were surprised that none of your warriors was with you." Before anyone could say a word, Scythe ran out to welcome you home. As she drew near to you, she realized that it wasn't you, but the Fir Dorica. We were powerless and could only watch helplessly as he touched her with a hazel rod, and she became a fawn. She tried to escape, but his 2 hounds prevented her. There was nothing we could do. Finn spent the next 7 years searching for Scythe, but with no success. One evening, as he was returning home, his 2 hounds suddenly raced off in the direction of a small wood. Finn was overcome by a strange feeling and followed them curiously. There, under a tree, was a little boy of about 7 years old. The boy and Finn looked at each other. Then the little boy reached out his hand and placed it in Finn's. Finn looked into the boy's face and recognized the eyes of his beautiful wife, Scythe. He knew that this was his son. The little boy returned home with Finn. At first he could not speak, but gradually, as he learnt the language, he told Finn about the fawn that had taken care of him. He spoke about a tall, dark man who would appear and try to talk to the fawn, but she would always run away. The last thing he remembered before meeting Finn was the dark man hitting the fawn with a hazel rod and forcing her to follow him. "You are indeed my son," said Finn sadly. "I loved your mother, but the Fir Dorica stole her from me. He has no power over you. You will stay with me, and when you are old enough, you will join the Fianna. I will call you Oisin, little fawn." Oisin became a great warrior and a famous poet. When he grew up, he visited his mother in Tir na Nog. Next is the story of the children of Lear. Once upon a time, there lived a king called Lear who had 4 children. a daughter named Fionnuala, and 3 sons called A, Fiachra, and Con. Their mother, the queen, was dead, and the children were sad because they missed her terribly. They missed the stories she used to tell them, the games she used to play, and the songs she sang at bedtime as she hugged them to sleep. The king saw that his children were sad and needed a mother, so he decided to marry again. His new bride was called Aoife. She was beautiful, but she was not the kind-hearted person the king thought she was. Aoife grew jealous of the 4 children because their father loved them very much. She wanted the king all to herself, so she planned to get rid of the children. She asked a druid to help her, and together they thought up a terrible spell. In the castle grounds there was a lovely lake, which the children spent most of their time playing beside. One day Aoife went with the children to the lakeside. As they played in the water, she suddenly pulled out a magic wand and waved it over them. There was a flash of light, and the children vanished. In their place were 4 beautiful white swans. One of the swans opened its beak and spoke with Fionnuala's voice. "What have you done to us?" she asked in a frightened voice. "I have put a spell on you," replied Aoife. "Now everything you have will be mine. You will be swans for 900 years. You will spend 300 years on this lake, 300 years on the Sea of Moyle, and 300 years on the Isle of Glora. Only the sound of a church bell can break the spell." When the children did not come home that evening, the king went to look for them by the lake. As he came near, 4 swans swam up to him. He was amazed when they began to call out, "Father, Father, we are your children. Aoife has placed a terrible magic spell on us." The king ran back to the castle and pleaded with Aoife to change the swans back into children, but she refused. Now he saw how selfish she was, and he banished her from the kingdom. Lear promised a reward to anyone who could break the spell, but nobody knew how. Lear spent the rest of his life beside the lake, talking to his children until he grew old and died. The swans were heartbroken. They no longer talked or sang, and nobody came to see them. "300 years passed, and it was time for the swans to move to the cold and stormy Sea of Moyle between Ireland and Scotland. The poor swans were tossed about by the wild waves and dashed against sharp rocks. It was a harsh life with little food, and the years passed slowly. When the time came for them to fly to the Isle of Glora, the swans were old and tired. Although it was warmer on the island and there was lots of food, they were still very lonely. Then one day they heard the sound for which they had waited 900 years. It was the sound of a church bell. The bell was ringing in the tower of a little church. An old man sat outside. He was amazed to hear swans talking and listened to their sad story in astonishment. Then he went inside his church and brought out some holy water, to which he sprinkled on the swans while he prayed. As soon as the water touched them, the swans miraculously began to change into an old woman and 3 old men. Lear's children were frightened. The man told them all about God and his love for people. They no longer felt scared. Fionnuala put her arms around her brothers, and all 4 old people fell into the ground dead. The old man buried them in a grave. That night he dreamt he saw 4 swans flying up through the clouds, and he knew that the children of Lear were at last on their way to heaven to be with their mother and father again. The last story I'm going to read to you today is Finn and the Dragon. Finn was traveling to Tara to join the Fianna. The road to Tara was busy with people arriving for the great festival of Samhain. Finn arrived in time for the feast, but there was no seat for him in the banqueting hall. "Who are you?" the High King asked. "I don't recognize you. Tell me your name." "I am Finn, son of Cool," said the young man. There was a silence in the great hall. All eyes were on Gul MacNorna, the man who had killed Finn's father, Cúl. The king spoke. "You were the son of a friend, and you are welcome to my feast." He put Finn next to his own sons, and the feast began. During the feast, the High King spoke. "For the past 9 years, Tara has been visited on the festival of Samhain by an evil spirit. This spirit appears in the form of a fire-breathing dragon, which causes great damage. My magicians are powerless. Many warriors have tried to kill it, but all have failed. Is there anyone among you who will save Tara?" the High King asked. No one spoke. Finn stood up. "What reward will be given to the person who is successful?" "I will grant you whatever you want," replied the king. "In that case, I will defend Tara from the evil spirit," said Finn. Finn walked to the outer walls of the city. The sky was dark, and there was no sound to be heard. The people were gathered safely inside the walls. Finn heard footsteps. "Who goes there?" he called. "I am a friend," came the reply. "I was a friend of your father's, and I've come to repay a favor your father did for me. As you know, when the dragon approaches, he plays sweet music. Anyone who hears this music falls asleep at once. Take this magic spear, and as soon as the music begins, press it against your forehead, and the music will have no power over you. I must hurry away now." Finn was left alone. From the darkness came a low, sweet sound. It was the magic music of the fairy world. Immediately, Finn put the spear to his forehead, and although the people of Tara fell into a deep sleep, Finn remained awake. The dragon breathed a long blue flame. Finn aimed and fired the spear. The dragon fell dead on the spot. Finn cut off its head. "What is your wish?" the High King asked. "I ask to be the leader of the Fianna as my father was," replied the proud hero. The High King agreed. "You have a choice to make," the High King said to Gul MacNorna. "You can accept Finn as your leader, or you must leave Ireland." Gul thought for a while, and then spoke to Finn. "Here is my hand. I will gladly serve you." Once he had submitted, the other warriors of the Fianna followed. So Finn became their leader, as his father before him had. And that concludes this episode of the Irish Stories and Poems. Please check back for the next and last installment of this series, and thank you so much for watching.